It's still morning. I checked my watch. So my name is Denny Moan. I'm a local AFCEA chapter volunteer to be a moderator for this session. Some of you, if you've been in other sessions the last few days, you've probably run into me already. If you have questions about AFCEA, I'm more than happy to talk you into joining if you're not a member. I've been a member for 56 years, joining this chapter in Augusta in 1969. So been around a little while. And it's been professionally beneficial to me in all my working career. So I continue to support it by being a volunteer for these sessions. This is a recorded session, and I think it's eligible for certification classes as well. That's the case on the way out. Don't forget to scan your badge over there, and if you're having trouble, you got to lay them flat. Don't hold them up flat. For some reason, it's picky about how they're read. And for questions at the end of our open discussion, I want to capture that using a mic. I will run a mic to you to ask a question so we get the question recorded as well. And so, now you're going to tell me this is working, not working. Something went away. End of a slideshow. That's the last slide. I'll get there.
Let it cycle through, it's okay.
Okay. All right, I'm going to turn it over to the panel. You got control.
Good morning, everybody. Yes, good morning, everybody. We have some duty experts here. We have to discuss an opportunity for exercises to help address the Finnish Army's concerns on borderland security. I'm going to let all the participants introduce themselves. Mr. Evans?
Yes. So I'm Jeff Evans, Principal Research Engineer at the Georgia Tech Research Institute. And for those who aren't aware, we are part of Georgia Tech, but we're considered general faculty. We do full-time research, but we're also firewalled in a sense that we operate under the FARs. We operate as essentially a not-for-profit defense contractor. And many people don't realize the scope and magnitude of that type of work, but this past year we completed almost $920 million in research. 90% of that's for the Department of Defense or the intel agencies. We have almost 3,000 people, research engineers and scientists, and we do programs at all levels of classification. We also will do almost any type of work. We're considered a UARC, which means we're a university affiliated research center to the U.S. government, so we're considered a national asset. And so that allows us to often operate as a technical liaison for the U.S. government. And wide range of things, if you need expertise in anything from radars to electro-optical to communications, cybersecurity, et cetera, we probably have a program in that area and some expertise in that area. So can talk a lot more about it, but that's probably enough for now.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Jarkko Suokka. I'm a man with many hats, as most Finns do. I don't know if you're aware, but in Finland we still have a conscript army, so everybody has to serve. And I'm still an active Air Force reservist. Just finished a few weeks ago. I was part of Atlantic Charter 25 exercise where U.S. Air Force, British Air Force, French Air Force, and Finnish Air Force worked together, and that was one kind of an example or a situation where we saw that Finland has a lot of capabilities that could maybe benefit Other countries are allies, or on US in particular. But the reason I'm sitting here, I think, is more to do with the fact that I'm driving this Borderland Europe initiative, where we are about to build, as we hope to be, the world's best living lab environment for border and digital security. Finland has an 813-mile long land border with Russia and some 100 miles on sea. So for obvious reasons, we are taking that situation quite seriously. And we need more advanced systems, sensors, cameras, but also data systems to how to filter from that massive amount of data from those different systems and new innovations. I've been bridging Finnish companies to US market a few years now, and on those travels I met Jeff from TTRI and Kathy and Stacy, and I have a kind of a belief or strong will to push this through, because I know Finland is very high on education. We are an engineering nation. We have very good innovations on all of those things I just mentioned. However, our access to US DoD market has been quite limited, because we only just 2 years ago joined NATO. So we're just still learning all those things. And the Borderland Europe thing, one of the passion is to help Finnish SMEs to grow and bring those capabilities to your knowledge, and maybe co-create and test and evaluate and such. So that's in short. I'll tell you more in a bit. And over to Kathy.
Thank you, and welcome. Colonel Kathy Swasina, retired, 32 years in the Army, background in training, operations, and IT and strategy. I was one of the deputy CIOs for the Army, and I finished out my career as the deputy chief of operations for the Army Reserve. I've done combat support, combat service support in all those branches, in various branches, and I specialize in IT network architecture. Currently, I'm CIO for ShipperWorks, and I'm here to help support this operations and get more involvement and figure out how we can do interconnectability in these lab situations. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Stacy Vaughn. I have spent the last 30 years, I tell people I started when I was 10, just to not show my age, on government GovCon contracts and operations, especially in overseas. I spent 2 years in the Middle East supporting our warfighter in operations of communications. And so, as Jarkko said, this is kind of a really special, sweet little space that if you are a small business, teaming with international company is really important, because a lot of they don't know what they don't know in supporting our warfighters and also supporting their warfighters in that aspect. But our biggest aspect of this is a really good growth strategy. We love to have your feedback on this. We are still weeding it out. It is not perfect by any means. So go back to you, Maria.
With this research and this teaming between a new NATO nation and our military, what do you hope to accomplish?
Well, if I start, the things what we observe, and we very closely observe everything that happens in Ukraine, we recognize quite quickly that Finnish Defense Forces, for example, didn't have speedy systems enough to get the newest innovation in place. So the motivation for us is to create a system where those innovations already existing or new ones in the pipeline could be commercialized and put in the frontline action as soon as possible. Because Finnish military, and I think most of the militaries in this world did and will do still experimentation, but the cycle of that is too slow. And I also hold a position in Finnish Parliamentary Drone Committee, and we get the drone is a perfect example that in Ukraine, the whole life cycle from idea to actual field use is sometimes measured in few weeks. And we have to match that in order to have the upper hand in the battlefield. And that's one of the primary kind of motivations on the Finnish military side or Finnish company side as well. So, well,
And if I can add, so as part of our work at GTRI, my background's telecommunications, wireless networks, and so I've deployed many test events over the number of years I've been at Georgia Tech. We created from that something we call global technology experimentation, and that's the ability to do a low barrier of entry of a technology or multiple sets of technologies that address a shortfall, either in the combatant commands or some part of the service elements. We just finished an exercise, for example, called Crimson Viper. It's a coalition partnership building with Thailand and driven by Indo-PACOM, where we had 15 technologies that we put into the field to explore the integration of maritime domain with real-time sensor analysis and drone, counter-drone, and then integrating that into a common operational picture. So that's all capabilities that GTRI can help bring together. So we were fortunate to meet with Jarkko at Georgia Tech, and as we started to explore, we realized that this is the perfect environment with Finland, with the long border, so you have huge distances, you have extreme weather conditions. He thought it was hot when it got to 85 degrees in Finland, but the flip side of that is they'll get minus 30 C. And of course, that's where you want to start testing technologies, for example, for their performance in a wide diversity of both distances as well as climate environments. So we hope to be able to show a low barrier of entry for technologies, collaborating with the Finnish technologies. We saw some of their work and it's just outstanding. Integrating that in a unique way that benefits both the partnership with Finland and the US, but also provides knowledge to everyone in terms of next generation border security.
So let me understand this, because I am the least Army person here in the world. So Finland has harsh weathers, so we can do cold weather, extreme testing, and you also have, since you're close to the Arctic Circle, a concentration of population more to the south and vast lands at the top, but you have this humongous border with a known, let's say worldwide, anti-diplomatic, the Russians, okay? And so this allows you to get data points and harsh weather, cold weather, equipment, personnel training to gather data points that then can be used and leveraged throughout any of the DoD entities that are participating in this Borderland thing. Does that kind of summarize it?
It does, and we also get GPS interference for free from Russians. They provide that for us daily, so that's an asset that most places don't have. But you're right, and what we are looking at, we had an exercise. I was hosting a group from, as Jeff told, a group on GTRI, and there were some US DoD actors on the group as well. So we used Finnish tech company called AFCEA, provide us a satellite real-time image. We had some drones up, and then we had 5G network slicing that we used to operate armored vehicle over distance. And it was really simple system. Even after a couple of minutes of prepping, Jeff was able to drive that vehicle. And just one example of many that we can provide. So that is something that I hope for, have these multi-domain operations displayed in those Borderland situation. And then after the fact that we start testing, and the next test will be probably held in next January or February. Our first test probably last maybe week or two, and over the period of a couple of years, we hope that Borderland Europe will be running 24/7, 365. And we have collaboration in 6G Diana flagship program from University of Oulu, and Jeff is also had a vast kind of experience on that field. So there's a huge amount of different possibilities for sensors, cameras, photonics, and all those. And we want the Borderland to be all-inclusive. In the beginning, of course, we concentrated with a couple of key partners like GDRI and some others, but in the future, our vision is that it's open access for government, research, or business to come and test and evaluate technologies and capabilities in Finland. But also going to other direction, we want to also bring some of the Finnish companies and innovations to come to be tested here in the US, because I think you have some things that we don't have, and see that it works both ways.
Could this lead to NATO countries doing war gaming and war gaming exercises to see if these scenarios are plausible or realistic, considering the harsh situation and the tremendous amount of land that has to happen for this type of situation to become real?
Yes, I think that is a very plausible future. And this border security, I think it touches most of the countries in today's world, not only in military sense, but in civilian and so-called normal times. We have to be able to kind of have information, trustworthy information from the border, and use maybe cameras with AI recognition systems in ever-changing environments. So yes, I see that a great possibility, a very likely future.
I was also going to say, it's not limited just to air and land.
No.
You have drones that you're also testing for water use.
Yeah, that is true. Surface drones under surface. Finland has a very long coastline and very kind of unique space where we can't use very kind of big vessels because it's such a shallow and rocky coastline. So we have to have drones that function on water, and those drones that we use we also use them, water drones, as platform for air drones to get better visibility and making the target value less, because then the drones will be displayed from different locations every now and then. So they don't go from the same location back from the same location, because always with the Russians, they would then target that quite quickly. Because at the end of the day, we want to make Russia small again. That's my and that's my personal. It doesn't represent official Finnish government. Let's be clear on that. But that's one of our kind of aiming things.
So you want to leverage the surprise example that the Ukrainians were able to do with having those container boxes full of drones, and all of a sudden, Russia's going, huh?
Yeah.
And see if we can use that concept to leap forward?
Yeah, that was a perfect modern Trojan horse example that shows that in very low investment we can kind of balance the battlefield to our favor. We don't need to have the multi-billion-dollar equipment, and we can still make an impact on the strategic capabilities of our enemies.
No offense to the jet fighters being built and the tanks, okay? Just saying, it's just like we can use stealth.
Also, to add to that, for the business owners, we don't want to be like when we were in Iraq and Afghanistan, where it was an afterthought when we needed a lot of stuff beforehand. So this, if we're doing the preventative now to build to this point, it makes it more effective and efficient, so that it's not just a one-time testing, it's a continual at this point. A little cell that Danny was talking about for AFCEA, this is one of the advantages of being a member, and we are also involved with the AFCEA International in Europe. They are also hosting the Borderland to help us find this partnership, and we call it the Borderland Tour, here's the band and this is what we're singing.
Yes, and just to add to some of that, the remarkable opportunities here. I mentioned we did some things in Southeast Asia. That's a completely different environment. And part of the theme here, and there's several themes, is you train where you fight. And you have to understand the environments, and the environments change, and that changes the conditions you operate in. So that's a major effort that we're trying to make it as real life as possible. The scale of innovation that's happened in the Ukraine obviously has been almost mind-boggling. There are certain things I would have said 3 years ago cannot be done, but they're doing it. And so how do you implement this in this environment and do it, again, as a low-cost barrier of entry? You can test it quickly. You understand, I think it uses now maybe a bit dated in the government side, but it was fail fast. And the goal is not obviously to fail fast, but to understand how you need to upgrade a system or add a capability and what are our gaps. If you integrate that and then take that lesson away, then yes, you do create wargaming environments. Maybe you create digital twins to use, again, other themes, but the goal, again, is find how technologies interoperate to address a critical problem. And as Jarkko mentioned, the Russians are providing for free the GPS jamming already. So now how do you operate within that constraint?
Yeah, and on addition, most of the European countries are now boosting up their defense budgets. So any business in this room or in this convention, there's a great opportunities for businesses all across Europe now, because the Finland has never we still have the conscript army, as I said, so we kind of have been always more or less prepared, but very many European states have not. And that creates a huge business opportunity for everybody here who has some capabilities to sell or provide. So that is also an asset. And one kind of good thing about that we have a conscript army, that means that half of the Finnish population is kind of an end user of all those equipment or services. So we have first-hand experiences of how does it feel you are in minus 30 in woods and your radio doesn't function. I have many experiences of that myself, and it's not nice, because then you can't really do anything. And so those assets, if we pull together and with the expertise of your much kind of a longer history to how to make NATO standards as a marker, so we combine those, and I think it's a very kind of a winning recipe for future.
I was going to say, so the ultimate is, of course, shoot, move, and communicate. And so this gives us an opportunity under duress, so to speak, in environments that we're not usually in, to train in, and interoperability, especially for things like communications devices, where this is an opportunity to further the integration. And like Jeff said, find the gaps and be able to fill the gaps. And that gives the industry a great opportunity to come in and see where those gaps are and how they can innovate quickly and adapt quickly in this environment.
Yeah, because one of the kind of a driving, and sorry about my dark and sinister humor, is that our aim is to build the best and most beautiful digital border wall and make Russia pay for it. But still working on that. But that's the ultimate goal, because I think these kind of technologies are well needed. We can't just build a physical fence there. It doesn't serve the purpose, and it's too expensive. It's useless in most cases. But this kind of digital surveillance and data points has to be there. And now we have full collaboration with Finnish Border Guard. They are our point of contact points for these operations.
In this day and age, Hadrian's Wall doesn't hold back the threat.
Yeah, it is great to visit, though. But that being said, so maybe we can set the stage. When we had our 3-day workshop that was hosted there, we did come up with a number of example scenarios. Again, what would this look like? And an example could be you have unattended ground sensors. They have to communicate certain types of data sets. So maybe you fly a UAV over the top. Finland has already developed a unique small aerostat that perhaps you could connect the UAV to the aerostat, which then communicates back to a tactical operations center. So now you have pervasive surveillance, and that's one of the key elements. We hope to bring other programs that I know GTRI is connected with, and many of you may be, but there's a lot of requirements around resilient energy. So if you're going to have pervasive surveillance, then you have to have constant energy sources. And so there are programs such as power beaming that we're working on that allows you to repower in flight the UAV, and therefore it allows it to keep flying the mission. So we could bring things like that to the table, and now you have a holistic set of technologies that delivers what you need. But as you know, power beaming and just batteries in general are going to perform quite different at minus 30 degrees C than they perform. In fact, we had the opposite impact in Thailand in that the batteries would overheat, so because it would be so hot. So again, understanding all of those conditions, all those operational conditions, I think feeds great information back to the combatant commands and to all of the service elements.
So batteries, you have a Tesla then?
No Tesla.
No, that's been a known issue with the cars up in like northern states and Midwest, that all of a sudden the guaranteed 250-mile range is down to like 100, and undocumented feature in those vehicles because of the battery and the extreme weather conditions and how that battery functions. So, question for you, Yarko.
Yep.
You've got all this land with all this technology. If there's something closer to the Russian border, how does this data point and the surveillance affect your response time to an imminent threat should your sensor pick up one?
Well, it's a problem. Let's be honest with that. Because of the vastness of the border, and we're still working on the solution on that. To be very honest with you, and I think, as far as I understand, the solution doesn't exist anywhere at this point.
So what you're saying, it's an opportunity for small business to help you in research.
Precisely,
And come up with something that could be then leveraged within the DoD and the NATO community.
That is correct, and we have some capabilities that I have seen, but they're probably in this room something that we haven't seen, and we wish that, as said, to be all-inclusive and open for ideas. So whether it's government, research institute, or private business, and especially my heart goes to small to medium-sized business, because I think, at least in my experience, I've been in engineering education for 30 years. Most of the innovative stuff usually comes from the small agile companies or groups. And I always look answers for those because they truly think different. Because I personally don't believe sometimes the best approach being make systems a little bit better. I strongly believe that we have to make them different, and they therefore kind of have an edge on the battlefield with that capability.
The other component, so the other component was we do have a city in Finland, Joensuu, who will help host our first test per se, and we did our workshop with. So in some aspects, you guys need to kind of think of like SLED, but European style, because they're dealing with the states. We're dealing with some of their little cities, those aspects. So how do you communicate? The other thing that we are on this effort is working with some of the bigger firms of the Nokia. Everybody knows who Nokia is, but this Nokia Defense, and then we're working with Patria, and then Telia. Telia is like the AT&T. That's the best way to explain them. But they are only adaptable, as Jarkko was saying, to a certain point, and they are always, and they have created a EU alliance group, but they have not done their homework, and we're helping them vet through and then also feed in other companies so that they understand how to work with each other in that aspect, because they did show us an ideal solution, but doesn't mean it will be ideal for every component of our testing.
Or in every situation.
Or every situation, yes.
Yeah, I'd like to just kind of let the audience know, like, what we did see at the workshop in those 3 days. With those companies that Stacy just mentioned, it was, to me, very impressive in that you could drive a vehicle more than 100 kilometers away remotely using a 360 camera and drone support and be able to accurately maneuver that vehicle to around mud puddles and tank traps and everything else that was very agile system. And, even putting on at different points, you could drive the vehicle You could put on the glasses, the virtual glasses, to be like you were the drone. And it was very interesting to see all those different technologies pull together and operate in that environment.
Has any, I don't know, investigation been on, before the Iraq war started, everybody thought that the drones and all that stuff was going to be a wonderful thing. Has any of the lessons learned from our 20 years with that been applied to the thoughts behind what would this happen in driving a remote vehicle for 100 kilometers remotely and the impact? Sorry.
As far as I know, I've been in research for too long, 30 years now. It has made a drastic change. The information we got from Ukraine is saying that now currently, depends how you calculate, something like 75 to 80% of all losses happen because of drones. And so that's a big kind of game changer of how do you look the battlefield as a whole. So we had to kind of rethink our whole reserves training. We have a capability to, if we really push, get some close to 850,000 people to be deployed. However, if they're not trained well and they don't have the capability or understanding of how the system has changed, so then the worst thing will happen for those people, and we certainly don't want to that. And with this current situation, because it's not only for this Borderland initiative and these capabilities are not only for war fighting situation, most of them are usable for critical infrastructure monitoring and all of those. And we want our border guards and critical infrastructure people to have first-hand updated information, maybe in their smart glasses on. So they have 360 situational awareness anywhere they go. We don't want them having 1980s technology, because that's some of them still are using, and we are still using some of that. And we want to be at least 2 or 3 steps ahead. And Finland has a very good photonics and AI and quantum computing capabilities that we are utilizing, because there will be, if we think about that 813-mile border, there will be hundreds and hundreds of sensors and cameras. And we have to make a decision based on AI rather than there are not enough people in our reserves, at least, to monitor all that data. So there must be a AI system saying, okay, that change of that video is just based on because there was a snowfall or wind, and that change is based on some human activity, and that's not a real. It comes very quickly, a computing problem, and for that we need, and Finland has invested a lot of these data centers, and quantum computing is a very key of that. So even though it's border security, critical infrastructure security, but very quickly it's a data center and a computing problem in a way.
So would the AI information stay with the Finnish government or the Finnish DoD? Because what you're talking about with AI is a lot of proprietary national security type data, and I'm assuming the Finnish would not like that to fall into anybody else's hands.
No, the least of our beautiful friends from the east. Of course, we want to have the ownership of that data and secureness of that data. That is correct.
I was going to piggyback on that. We've been talking about a lot of the opportunity for industry on this Borderland lab that we're talking. But for a DoD perspective, it gives us an opportunity to get some more sensors, better data, more accurate data, faster data with these lab experimentation. And of course, we're only as good as the data that we have that creates the knowledge so that we can just make the decisions to move forward.
Well, that just builds on something that I've done presentations over the years around the Internet of Things. We have a center back at Georgia Tech. We do that work, but we also are driving a lot of initiatives with 5G and XG. And that is the holy grail, if you look at it, of pervasive sensors call it IoT if you want, the communications to deliver the information and the AI, because 99.9% of the information out there, you don't really care that much about. So it just needs to be processed. It needs to be understood. You do need to keep that. But you better get that 0.1% of that information that you need. And I like to say maybe you get it before you know you need it. So those are things that we want to be able to test, again, with this smartly integrated, different set of platforms. It could include, you might think, for example, again, other scenarios. You take a UAV that's picking up pervasive sensors on the ground, picking up the information, but it has no GPS. So in order to keep it flying the track it's supposed to, perhaps it communicates as an optical link over to the aerostat that's a couple miles inland. It's not being jammed, so now it locks up GPS that way. I'm just throwing out examples. There are numerous requirements that perhaps we don't even understand. In fact, we'll need some of your input to say what are some of the technology requirements that should be tested, that should be understood. And this gives us an environment to do that.
Tell us what we don't know.
Yes, that's a good summary. Yes.
And there are so many opportunities, as Jeff says, we don't even know what we don't know. But some things that we are in Finland currently doing is using 6G or next G as sensor. So those places of interest can be monitored by this 6G network.
I do want to add one more comment too, is that all of this has to integrate. Something we're looking at right now is the critical communications requirements and what's the next generation for the EU and for NATO. That's very important, and it's extremely important if the U.S. is to participate as partners, because some of the standards are somewhat different. The frequencies might be a little different. And so we need to, this can help us evolve the STANAGs, the NATO requirements, utilizing 3GPP on the comms capabilities. So this can also help us understand how you interoperate with standards that aren't always in sync between countries.
So,
Oh, sorry.
so cryptography is going to play a key role in whatever you develop, due to make sure the key pair and the match set so the data is protected and secure in transit.
Very true. And then that's another realm of its own, that alone. And then the huge advancements in quantum computing throws another curveball on that direction. So how good of cryptography you must have in order to sustain in the quantum computing world. So that's a question for wiser people than me. But it's going to be kind of a vast area of interest of ours as well.
The other area we have talked about in our workshop, which we dealt with sensors and also the cybersecurity aspect of that, because we're dealing with so many different countries, their compliance, our NATO compliance. So that's a big aspect of it. And then the third was which one? It was sensory, cyber, and
360 awareness.
360 awareness, yes. So just to kind of give you an idea.
Does anybody have any questions out there? Does anything that anybody need any clarification on?
I'll ask one. Just
Okay.
to stimulate it. Very interesting, because this is work that I've done in the past myself from a research point of view, is you've described what I would consider a range of heterogeneous sensors. We're talking about ground sensors, I've worked with them, probably audio sensors, video, and they might be in spectrum sensors. I'll call them spectrum analysis, right? So historically, integrating those with some operations center with, hopefully the right skilled person sitting there could see all these and do mental integration. So is part of the work that you're doing solving that problem of integrating heterogeneous sensors? Because that's extremely important.
You are in core of the problem, I think, with that question, because that is At the end of the day, as Jeff said, probably 99.9% of the data is useless or harmless or doesn't have any relevance. But we need to get how do we integrate all that information in understandable form. So one single decision maker, whether it's a border guard or whoever, has enough information, but it's not overwhelmed with, you can't monitor 1,000 camera information. You have to filter that some way, shape or form, or adding the audio on that. So it's a problem to be solved. And if we solve that problem, I think most of the other ones are, as far as I understand, a little bit more doable in a sense. So that 360 awareness is a key.
So you can have a false alarm, for example, on a single
Exactly.
sensor, and can you validate that using
Right.
heterogeneous, I call heterogeneous, but a different technology sensor to validate? That's really important, I think, in what you're doing. So,
Sounds like you're talking about, forgive me, being an IT geek, something equivalent to a SIEM tool for the data input, so it flags the important, hey, look into this, ignore everything else. It looks like this may be something.
Yes, and our vision, as we say, we can't be in fixed points. So the center of information must be movable. Because if we have a, let's say, data center or HQ somewhere in fixed points, that will be a target in a nanosecond. And we don't want that. So it must be mobile, it must be small enough to be transformed from place to A to B quite quickly.
are you engaged, lots of experience with swarm technology, and I assume the airborne platforms that you're using, and probably sea-based swarm technology as well?
That's part of it, and we've got quite a bit of experience on the swarm side, participated in some contests and actually won a contest for how many can you put into a swarm at a given time. And the behavioral aspects, so you mentioned the sensors. Part of the operation idea would be, yes, you have sensors, sometimes proprietary interfaces, they have to network in certain ways, but you maybe get a tip and cue. You know, you've got some bit of information that is an anomaly. So what asset can you send to that autonomously to quickly understand how valid it is? All of that factors into a test environment. And that's exactly what we just did, as I mentioned, 2 weeks ago in our Crimson Viper exercise.
My background, my family background is Norwegian, so I have to ask this question. You indicated that your eastern border, you have figured out how to get the Russians to pay for that border. I'm curious if you figured out how to get the Swedes to pay for their western border. My mother would really be interested, though. She's deceased now, but.
Because the true story actually is when I met Jeff at the Georgia Tech, they were planning this GTX event to Sweden, and I said, hell no. You don't go to Sweden because we have this love-hate relationship with Sweden. So that was kind of we wouldn't be sitting here if that would be some other country.
I told him I'm glad I put that bullet in there that we may do an exercise with Sweden, because he grabbed me at lunch and said, why are you doing it there? He said, why not Finland? I said, okay. So that was a good miss, if you want to call it
You
that.
got to be Norwegian to understand the relationship between the Swedes and Finnish. And,
Scarcity breeds clarity. And I see a lot of incredible innovation coming out of those types of scenarios. So I would love, as this opens up to anyone on the panel, do you have any great examples where solutions, small business or otherwise, can not only tell you my solution can solve your problem, but my solution can solve many of your problems. And they may be problems that extend cross-disciplinary. So you mentioned sensors, for example. Sensors will play a very pivotal part for obvious reasons for border defense. However, I would imagine that the information that's getting from those sensors could be very effective for environmental purposes, for energy purposes, for agriculture purposes, and there may even be some type of a monetization stream. Like, what would the rest of NATO pay for information about that from the sensor data that could be a separate monetization stream for Finland? Like, what kind of mad scientist, powers combined type of scenario should we be thinking about to support your mission efforts, regardless of defense?
you're absolutely right, and there are a few Finnish companies that have started actually as environmental sensor things. They were censoring and monitoring how the nature is handling the climate change. And their sensors were primarily in the beginning just censoring how the forests are evolving or destroying, or how the ice is melting or not melting. And then they recognize actually, hey, this actually goes very nicely to defense or border security side. So there's already a lot of companies in Finland has crossed over from being a civilian use thing now, because of obvious reasons, to defense, and vice versa. And all that information, it can be, some information can be somebody's garbage, but other person's valued treasure.
You mean IoT smart cities being dual used?
One of the companies that we have seen over in Finland, for example, developed a sensor that you can put on the roof to see if there's moisture on a roof of a building. Okay, imagine if that sensor can also detect if you've got somebody walking around on the top of that building, as well as the moisture detection. You know, I mean, first of all, just the moisture detection can save, you know, possibly hundreds of thousands of dollars if it's a large building, in roof repair. You know, but now if you've got a sensor on top that is so sensitive that it can detect whether it's an animal or a human on top of your roof, that's a transfer of something that is gone from a residential or commercial into a defense.
Like audio. What if a building, this roof sensor could also detect aircraft? I'm not saying drone, because drone would be really a sensitive thing and maybe defeat the purpose of it, but a sensor can detect many things. And that was one of the programs I managed at the State Department, was their IoT sensor program. So I understand the need and the security behind all that.
You know, and I have to say something about, you know, our soldiers and our military. Everyone is a sensor. And we're only as good as the equipment when it works, to be able to fight. And so therefore, I think this battle lab or Borderland lab is very important in doing those testings in extreme conditions, and seeing what kind of interoperability. And we're very inventive. So, you know, taking things that have a commercial and turning it into a DoD, you know, piece of equipment that can be used is vital.
So,
Spare me, the Army always gets the money, the Marine Corps gets the trash. Tell me about it.
Well, I think that's where we can kind of talk about the, like a SBIR or TTR aspect of it, that could help collaborate that. I think the only difference now, some of you went to the PEO panel, it's how do we utilize other countries' money and our money and make it most efficient, effective, and blend. And that's kind of one of our conversations that we're working due diligently, and with the help of Georgia Tech and George Mason and some of these other entities out there, that's one area that we are really focusing on. So it's not coming from one side only.
So I a related question to that, because I have some experience of having managed some NATO projects. Now that the Finnish are part of NATO, there's NATO funding in as well, and I don't know if that, you know, that would matter to a new country in NATO, I think.
It is actually on the table. We are working due diligence. If you guys haven't figured out, I'm the money girl. So I'm always searching for the money and making sure everybody's compliant. So we're always looking for opportunities in that perspective.
Kevin McKelvey, George Mason University. I have a couple questions, and the first one is actually directed to Stacy. We know each other well, but I was wondering if you could share with group what your company does and what that core business is, just so folks know, because I think you're playing that role with this group. And then I have a follow-up.
Okay. I'm also contracted out with Sherpa Works as their growth strategist. I do business development, but really help businesses who want to get into that government market and they don't understand what step number one is because you get feeded with a ton of information. So I call myself the tour guide. How do you get to next steps in that aspect? But also, how do you coordinate a project like this and be involved and know where your place is in marketing? Jarkko and I, we met all these great Finnish companies, but they are engineers. They know how to be a good engineer, but they do not necessarily know how to market to anybody. And so, again, how do we match you, kind of play matchmaker? How do we match you with some good European companies that could utilize some of their strategies of technology?
Right on. Thanks. I know you've helped a lot of companies get started and do business, so I wanted to highlight that for. So the question that I had related to Borderlands, Finland / Europe was related to what are your thoughts on the additional requirements for technology and systems and procedures for contested logistics? Because theoretically, you're going to have sensors spread across vast, sparsely populated areas. Going to have to service that somehow to reduce vulnerability, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm wondering what your thoughts are on that.
This gives you an excellent environment. Again, we tested some of that at field exercises in Hawaii and in Southeast Asia, trying to understand if one system fails, one bit of information fails, then what's the backup? Where can you get additional information? But the contested logistics is obviously a critical area, because if you need to get capabilities to a space quickly, maybe you need to get soldier support. And so, yes, that's going to be incredibly important.
And in our Finnish Defense Forces, let's say in our Air Force, we are quite good experts of moving fast, because we don't even, basically we have air bases, but we don't use them. We use highways in order to deploy our jets to mission and back. So, and they always leave from different location where they land, and vice versa. So it's in our DNA to be mobile all the time, because for obvious reasons, if we are in one same place, that's a target. And the current situation with the drones, you can paralyze any military airbase in Finland in a matter of a couple of minutes. So we have to be mobile, and logistics is something that I think we're quite good at in different locations and in extreme weather conditions.
Highway system services.
Yeah, that's part of our critical infrastructure. So every 100 miles or so, you see this wider patch of road, and we use those as our landing surfaces. And that is actually what we did in the Atlantic Trident 25 exercise. That F-35s from U.S. Air Force were landing on the road and taking off, and the French did the same. And we kind of checked our interoperability with those different places. And there were some problems, but that's part of the game, that we want to test those and find those places.
The F-35s.
Yeah, we bought, I think it was $10 billion, and we got some good planes coming there. So, yeah.
They bought 63 of them, by the way.
Yeah.
About testing.
Yeah.
More questions? Well, thank you very much.
Thank
This
you.
is a very interesting panel. And for me personally, to get connected with a family historic enemy, how's that, for lack of a better term?
I could share a couple of more quick examples too of why. So we didn't really talk about pervasive social media, and that's feeding off the sun. That's censored, and this is open information now. But at one point a number of years ago, when some troops were deployed, they would run the base perimeter and do it as their exercise. They then posted that up to Strava, which was a tool for monitoring. Yes. And then they realized that anybody could get to that information and understand the exact parameters of the base. Now, you take that information and you add it to additional bits of information, and that's critical. So we need to understand that too. So as part of a deployed environment, it's not just to provide you great wealths of information and capabilities, but it's also to make you aware of possibly the shortfalls out there that maybe you're giving away too much information and it can be exploited. So that's going to be a part of it as well.
Data mining?
Well, that's, yes, data mining, yes.
Thank you. Great panel. That's a good discussion and some really great questions too.
And if any of you is interested learning more, feel free to contact us. We'll be happy to give you more details and information how to contact. Thank you.